Hello, folks. Thank you for coming in. You are in the right session. The title on the slide is different. You know what? They asked us to provide the title of these talks really up ahead. I think about 3 months back, I had provided the title of this talk. And since then, I've worked with so many customers and realized that role-based access control does not do justice to the value that is being delivered in this space. It's much more than that, really. Role-based access control is just one aspect of managing access to Azure now. And what I want to discuss with you today, what I want to show you today, is all the different aspects of access management with Azure. What we've learned from the customers that have used the fine-grained access management features that we've delivered, and show you best practices and lots of demos. Demos on how to manage different aspects of access management, whether it's coarse-grained, fine-grained, etc. My name is Dushyant Gill. I'm a program manager in Azure Active Directory team. I've been with the AD team all my life at Microsoft, 8 years. I started in the on-premises Windows Server world. I was the owner of ADLDS. I don't know how many folks know Adam here. That's where I started, and for the past 4 years, I've been in the cloud space. Office 365 Identity team is where I joined. It became the Azure Active Directory team, and now for the past couple of years, actually, I've been working on making access management for Azure super simple and super capable, really, for it to be fitting for an enterprise deployment. My cards are here. You can get in touch with me on my blog. The link is not very visible, but if you get the slides, it's dushyantgill.com, blog contact. You can get in touch with me through there. Or you can grab a card. I don't have many, but you can grab a card from here. My email address is dugill@microsoft.com. It's going to be at the last slide also. You can email me anytime you want. Any questions you have around access management for Azure, I'd love to answer. Like I was saying, I've been working in this space for the past couple of years, but Azure in general, when it started, it was focused on smaller shops, smaller IT shops. And it wasn't just Azure. Other cloud providers also, when they started, they were focused on building great infrastructure capabilities. When it came to security and access management, they weren't super capable when they began, right? The poster child of services, running services in any cloud, if you search for it on your favorite search provider, you'll see that Netflix and Instagram, they appear on top. They are the examples of how to run services in the cloud. 3 DevOps people running a service which is reaching, millions and millions of active users every day. That's how you do automation, everything. But enterprises, when they are adopting, and those are the people who are actually bringing all the money to cloud deployments, and when they're adopting cloud, they have much more conventional needs, really. What they want to do is they want to stop the adoption that's happening of IaaS and PaaS in their departments, just the way it's happening for SaaS, which is people just going ahead, doing the right thing for their departments, purchasing AWS or purchasing Azure and starting to use it with their personal accounts. Starting to run corp services, store corp data in these clouds using personal accounts, because, well, that's the thing which is easiest for them to get started. They're sharing data, they're sharing access to those services with external customers, prospective customers, or their partners using their personal accounts also. None of that is connected back to the IT managed systems that these enterprises have put into place, right, for all the identity and access management. Azure Active Directory and Azure are changing this, right? Azure Active Directory is the identity platform of all Microsoft services. And for the past 3 years, we've been transforming Azure management, Azure service management, and Azure access management to be based off of an Azure Active Directory primarily, not based off of personal live IDs, MSAs, really. And now, when our enterprise customers are purchasing Azure, signing up for Azure, and starting to use Azure, manage Azure, they're doing it using their work accounts. We've made it super simple for enterprises to create an Active Directory in the cloud, an extension of their Active Directory on premises, and just ask their employees, hey, as long as you sign up to Azure using your work account, your subscription will automatically get associated with the directory that we have brought up. And all of the access that you then manage from there, you can manage access with the right people from your organization. And even when you grant access to externals, they will automatically get created in the directory to which your subscription is associated, and all the right things will happen. So what we've done is basically made it super simple for enterprises to set up a connection with their on-premises AD, and then empower the departments to do the right thing if they want to go ahead and procure and manage Azure on their own. They can do that using their work accounts, and they'll be under compliance. Azure Active Directory is super capable when there's a stark difference between managing access or managing Azure using Microsoft accounts versus using organizational accounts, work accounts. Role-based access control is one capability that Azure Active Directory powers in Azure. And I'm going to talk a lot about that. There are features like self-service group management. For example, if I want my regular users, not directory admins, if I want my regular users to be able to create groups, be able to manage the membership of that group, assign access to those groups in the right places, all of those capabilities are available in Azure Active Directory, and you're going to take a look. Business-to-business access management. If I want to have my partner identities, I want to share access with my partners to Azure resources. Azure Active Directory provides business-to-business capabilities where the entity of the partner gets created in the directory to which the subscription is associated. The authentication happens in their home directory, but the access is granted to the entity which is in the directory to which the subscription is associated, and you can apply policies there. For example, if you disable that entity, that we call it a guest account in the representation in the directory, if you disable that in one place in the directory, they lose access to all subscriptions that are associated to the corporate directory. Conditional access, it's a huge thing. It's no longer okay to just say, yeah, using corp accounts is fine, but our customers are asking for strong auth everywhere. And we've seen so many attacks, and multi-factor auth is just become a norm now. If we're not enabling, if our enterprise customers are not enabling multi-factor auth on their Azure management, we like discussing with them how to get them there, but most of them are. We're going much beyond multi-factor auth in terms of strong auth space. For example, there's a concept of known devices in Azure Active Directory. If a device is registered with Azure AD, there are multiple mechanisms that can be done. The simplest is like a workplace join kind of a feature where all that happens is that device becomes known. There are further stronger associations a device can have with the corporate directory. Azure Active Directory, Windows 10 can actually cloud domain join directly to an Azure Active Directory. MDM managed devices with Intune are known to Azure Active Directory, and we can have policies now enforced on the basis of you can only manage Azure or you can only manage this subset if you are coming from a healthy device, a known device. So applying those conditions, or things as simple as you should be within network to be able to manage Azure. Outside network, you can't. That's all the conditional access capabilities of Azure Active Directory that just get applied to Azure management also. Attribute-based access control. A lot of folks love to hear this term. Not many, I haven't met many people who actually use attribute-based access control effectively. Attribute-based access control meaning I don't grant access to named users and groups in my organization, but I say something like everybody in this department has this access in Azure. And as soon as somebody joins that department, they automatically get the right access based on the attributes of the user to be able to define access policies. We have that capability now in Azure Active Directory using dynamic groups. I'm going to show you that too. Manage access to daemon services. So it's not just Azure access that is managed to users and groups, but also if applications need access to Azure. Well, when do applications need access to Azure? When they are service accounts that are running independent of the user's context, whether it's a batch service, a script, which is a scheduled job, or a third-party ISV application that is monitoring your Azure subscription or providing management on top of your Azure subscription and wants to access your Azure subscription even when you're not around. That access is also now controlled via Azure Active Directory. The application gets registered as a multi-tenant application in Azure Active Directory, and you basically grant it the right access using RBAC to your subscriptions, only the required access, and you can revoke it anytime using just the access management features, which I'm going to show to you. If you want an example of this right now, go to the Datadog booth. They're going to show you how the connect with your Azure subscription experience is of Datadog. We're working with many more ISVs to just basically onboard them into that model, where app access is also going to be governed by Azure Active Directory. Consumer account sharing. When I share access, let's say I have a prospective customer, I've created a demo for them, and I want to share access for that demo piece with that prospective customer. We have the ability to share access with Microsoft accounts today. We're working on enabling Facebook and Google accounts, also other consumer accounts. But Microsoft accounts, today you can do that. Of course, 90% of all Azure subscriptions are using Microsoft accounts. That's transforming to organization accounts. But yeah, any consumer account that is granted access to an Azure subscription, that consumer accounts, this Microsoft account gets, again, created in that directory as a stub, as a guest account. And now, if you disable that in one place, they lose access to all subscriptions associated with that directory. Self-service password management is capabilities in Azure Active Directory where people don't have to now run help desk in their on-premises world. They can use self-service password reset capabilities of Azure Active Directory, and it has a password write back capability also, where the reset password is written back to the on-premises Active Directory. A super popular feature with Azure Active Directory. It is the very first feature that people go for when they actually buy Azure AD Basic and Azure AD Premium tier. This is basically what is governing access management to Azure. Azure AD is in the center of the thing. It's ensuring that all the right people in the organization only the right people are getting access to your Azure assets. They're only getting access under the right conditions. And there's enough self-service that they can do the right things themselves. You don't have to be an Uber admin of a directory or even the subscription admin to be able to manage access to Azure subscriptions. And of course, there's enough visibility and auditing capabilities that I'm going to show to you that you can keep a track of how access is changing in general. Let me show you what we've delivered in September and how that's evolved since then. By the way, it's very, you must have heard these numbers. Azure Active Directory processes 2 billion authentications every day. That's a huge number to comprehend. Every second, that actually translates to 23,000 authentications. So that's basically the platform that we have for all of our Microsoft Online services, and we're using the same platform for this. 700 engineers actually are working on Azure Active Directory in Microsoft, 699 apart from me. And we delivered 60 capabilities, updates to our service, significant updates to our service just last year. So it's a team that is delivering a lot of innovation. And if you want to follow the updates from Azure Active Directory, I recommend you subscribe to our blog, and I'll point you to that too. All right, let's take a look. So I'm signed in here in the Azure portal, or is it still called the Azure Preview portal? I forget. Hopefully, it's going to soon be the Azure portal. Yeah, and I've signed in as Ellen. She, in this hypothetical scenario, she signed in, by the way, using her work account, ellen@aaddemo.com. aaddemo.com is my demo company that I'm using. And she is, in this scenario, somebody from the Director IT office, and she owns the subscriptions that this organization is using to manage their service, to run their services in Azure. Let's take a look at how she set it up. I'm going to go to the resource group. If you folks are not familiar with resource group, how many folks are familiar with what a resource group is? Okay, all right. So the folks who did not raise their hands, it's a new concept in the new stack, if you may. The new stack is this new portal and a new service management API that goes along with this. It's called the Azure Resource Manager. Azure Resource Manager is the one which is capable of doing finer-grained access management. We've basically delivered as Azure AD this RBAC capability inside Azure Resource Manager. As soon as a new resource provider in Azure, resource providers meaning SQL, websites, compute, storage, as soon as any new resource provider comes behind Azure Resource Manager, onboards on Azure Resource Manager, they get role-based access control capabilities automatically. Azure Resource Manager has defined this new concept of a resource group where you can group resources together that have a similar life cycle. It's an entity, if you may, under the subscription, like I think of it as a folder, really. They have many more capabilities associated to a resource group. For example, you can create a template, deploy a resource group using a template. In access management, it's used as another place where you can grant access. So you don't have to grant access only at a subscription level, but you can even grant access at a resource group level now. And our customers are using resource groups now as the workload boundary. If they need to create multiple workloads which have different access needs, they don't have to spin up different subscriptions, create resource groups, and manage access there. So what she's done, Ellen has done, is she's created in her production subscription. So she has different subscriptions here, sandbox, production, test, development, and another RNP test that she has some kind of access on. But within the production subscription, she's created these 4 different resource groups. The main ones are prod service and the test service. Prod service resource group is the one in which she's running her production service, test service, as the name suggests, the staging. And there's some infrastructure resource group that she's created, which is holding the infrastructure items for the entire subscription. Let's take a look at, start with infrastructure. So what is opening up is the blade for that resource group. And I go to the who all has access. This is the user's icon, which I click on it to see who all has access to this resource group. What is configured is, if you'll see the rightmost column, this inherited versus assigned. Inherited access is what this resource group is inheriting from the subscription. So any access I assign at the subscription level, all resource groups within that subscription inherit that access control. And what she's done is she's granted access to, well, her entire org, actually, her manager's team as a reader for that subscription. Dan Jump's team, which is a partner team in her organization, has also been made the reader of this. And subscription admins are the owner of the resource group and the subscription at the subscription level. Let's talk about difference between owner and reader. Reader role is basically just a read only. They can't get to secrets, so it's a very easy role to grant to someone to give them visibility into all of the resources in that subscription or that resource group, wherever you grant it. And they can now they can see resources, they can monitor resources, but they can't make any changes. They can't get access to any secrets to make further changes on the data plane also. So that's a reader role. Owner is full access. It's the God privilege. Subscription admins is basically our co-admins and service admins that we've been used to, the classic roles, if you may. They become the owners of a subscription in the new RBAC model. They become the owners of the subscription at the subscription level. They become owners. So they have full access, just the way today co-admins and service admins have full access to the subscription. In the new portal also, they have full access as owners of the subscription. And further roles can be assigned to other users and groups. Here, what she's done is she's assigned network admins. That's a group in her organization, the security group in AD. She's assigned network admins the contributor privilege on this infrastructure resource group. Let's take a look at what this resource group has. So the network admins in here have created 2 standard VNets. We see this requirement a lot. The customers say that, hey, I want to have a standard VNet. Sometimes it's configured with the right outbound inbound policy. Sometimes it's the one which is connected with their express route. But that's the standard VNet. Only few people in their organization should be able to manage, usually the network admins in their on-premises world. And regular users who are creating VMs, let's say, should not be able to change the configuration of this VNet. But they should only be able to create VMs which are associated with this VNet. So that's the scenario which she's enabled, or network admins have enabled in Ellen's subscription. 2 standard VNets created within the infrastructure resource group. And then there is these prod service and test service resource groups in which the prod service and the staging service is running. And if you see the access of prod service is, what she's done is, again, all of the inherited from the subscription is the same, which is Christine's team and Dan's team have reader and subscription admins have owner. That's the same. But then after that, there is data admins group in the organization which have all of these different roles assigned to them. So data admin group, security group has been assigned the ClearDB MySQL contributor, document DB contributor, SQL security manager, and SQL server contributor. So basically, these are the people who are managing data related assets in her organization, and she's basically taken the security group of these data admins and granted her the security group the right resource type specific roles in Azure. And these folks can now manage types, resource types of all of these different types. Network admins are virtual network contributors. Server admins is another role, organizational role, if you may, that are assigned the storage account contributor and the virtual machine contributor role. And then finally, there's the web admins who are assigned the website contributor and the web plan contributor role. So there are different people in their organizations who are responsible for managing different kinds of resources. This is just a sample deployment. As I've been working with enterprise customers, I ask them, hey, so how are you moving to DevOps model? They're like, a lot of them are like, hey, we're making a shift to the cloud. That's a huge change. I think let us make this change with the existing roles from our on-premises. After that, we'll think of how to move to DevOps model. Right now, what they're saying is people who manage the PPP, the ping, power, and pipe in my data center are different from the people who are installing the blades, are different from the people who are installing applications, are different from the people who are installing or who are managing identities, and all of those have to be represented in their cloud deployments. And this is basically, Azure RBAC is enabling those kind of capabilities now with these fine-grained roles. If I take a look at all the roles that are now available in Azure for access management, owner, contributor, reader are simple to understand. Then there's resource type specific roles for all of these different resource types that we deliver. Soon we're going to allow creation of custom roles also, where, for example, there are some enterprises that are like, hey, I want to create a role which can only restart virtual machines and monitor virtual machines, nothing else. They're like the support people. So can we do that? Right now, that capability isn't there, but soon we're going to have custom roles capability. In fact, in 2 weeks from now, I'm going to start a private preview with select customers, select enterprise customers. I want people who really need custom role capability to try this out. If any of you are interested, and if you have a need right now to do some deployment of custom roles, try it out, get in touch with me, and I'd love to consider you having joined the private preview. Yeah? All right, so these are the roles that are available, and that's how she's managed access. She's granted access. But on a day-to-day basis, Ellen doesn't actually go in SharePoint. Ellen doesn't go in her TFS Online or wherever she's managing code. Ellen doesn't go to all these different applications and adds access to different people there. A lot of enterprise customers, what they're doing is they're granting the right access to the security groups of their teams, of these different organizational roles, and then managing membership of that group on an ongoing basis. And that's the same thing now with Azure. Let's consider John joining her team. That's a new person who's just joined her team. Let's see when he goes to the portal, he's not going to have access to anything. All right, all resources, nothing to display because, well, he doesn't have access. Well, by the way, in the new portal, I don't know if you've realized this, you don't need to have an access to any subscription to actually get to a portal, get to the portal. In fact, there are going to be some resource providers in Azure which don't belong to a subscription at all, which are at a directory level. There's already resource providers, for example, AD Connect Health. It's a service which you can deploy on premises. It's going to monitor your ADFS servers and provide monitoring information in the cloud. That's a service which is not associated to an Azure subscription at all, but still surfacing in the portal. AD admins would really appreciate this when we have AD management in the new portal, because today, when Office 365 admins, for example, they need to go manage features in Azure AD, they have to first go purchase an Azure subscription, get a credit card, all of that stuff. But now, with the new portal, that's not going to be required when we move AD management to this, so that's a nice thing. Yeah, so John doesn't have any access to this, but the organization is using self-service group management capability of Azure AD, and he goes to myapps.microsoft.com. And he's going to basically request to join Ellen's team. So I'm going to search for all groups, Ellen. And it's this team that he has to join. Hey, you've recently hired me. Provides the business justification, submits the request. And on this side, Ellen, basically after she receives an email that, hey, there's a notification waiting for you, she goes to the Azure AD information worker portal. This is where information workers go. Ellen, John, they're not directory admins, none of them. They're just regular users in the enterprise, managing subscriptions, doing the right thing for the subscriptions they are managing access to. So she goes to approvals, and she sees, oh, there's two. Maybe I need to approve both. Let me just do both. So she sees the business justification. She approves the request John has sent her. And on this side, when she comes back, when John basically receives, hey, your request has been approved. When he comes back, he should basically just have all the right access to the resources which have been configured. There you go. So that's the power of Azure AD, managing access to all of Azure using Azure Active Directory security groups. This would have been this exact same experience if John would have requested access using a product like a Dell group management product on premises, gotten added to the AD group in on premises, synchronized up, and gotten the same access. It would have just taken a little longer. What you saw was within 2 seconds, John got access because in the self-service group management, the write is made directly in Azure AD. But the same effect would have happened if the synchronization happened from on-premises or even from an external identity provider, identity management system. Like, for example, a lot of our small businesses using Office 365 customers who don't have AD on-premises, they're moving to HR solutions like HR solutions like Workday in the cloud completely. Hire of employees happens in Workday. And in fact, this organization has been set up. So if I show you this, let me close this. This is the directory admin view of the same organization. And if I go to applications, Workday has been already configured to import users, configure users import for this organization. And I can actually, I could have shown the same demo by an employee getting hired in Workday, getting added to the right groups in Workday, which is Ellen's team. And as soon as he shows up, the first day he has all the right access to Azure because, well, he's been provisioned in the right group to begin with. It just takes a little longer because that sync takes 1 hour. It's not as impressive. But yeah, that's the kind of access management capabilities we are now lighting up for Azure, considering end-to-end from a user productivity standpoint. It's pretty cool to enable these features. By the way, if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and ask the question. You don't have to come to these mics. I'm going to repeat your question. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm not going to keep questions till the end. Anytime you have questions, you can ask me. All right, so that was basically the access management capabilities that we've delivered. And let's switch back.
There's a question up front here.
Sure. Give me one moment, sorry. I forgot which one was my slides. Can you help me out? Which button is my slides? Okay, never mind. I'll find it. There aren't many. Okay, all right. Yes, question? Yes, sir.
Got a specific potential use case for you. You're using AD Deer Sync with federated authentication when you're doing fully Active Directory Premium or anything where all of your authentication is occurring in the cloud. Could you still set up Azure-only groups and then delegate management capability in the way that you just described? Is that still possible?
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Yep. So the question was, the use case is I've set up Azure Active Directory and the connection with my on-premises Active Directory. You've even purchased Azure AD Premium, and my DirSync is established. The authentication is happening in my enterprise using federation. Can I still set up Azure AD groups and assign access to them in Azure and do the same thing, all of the stuff which I was showing? The answer is yes. So one concept in Azure Active Directory is that it has these domains which are part of an Azure Active Directory. And one domain could, in the Azure AD, could be federated and connected to on-premises. Another domain could be cloud only. And Azure Active Directory Premium allows you the delegated group management feature across all domains in the directory. In fact, my AAD demo domain is part of an Active Directory which has multiple domains, and AAD demo is the one which is cloud mastered. The other domains are federated also. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So today, we're taking a feed from Workday and using that to provision all of our accounts and populate all the attributes to an on-premise AD.
Yes.
If we set up a DirSync, could we keep those attributes, address, phone number, could we keep those attributes up to date with the sync that happens from Workday to Azure AD and then DirSyncs down? Rather
Yep.
than having to pull that feed and run whatever manual PowerShell process or whatever we use today.
Got it. So the question is, they're using Workday, and they've connected Workday already with their on-premises Active Directory system. Do they need to do this custom integration with on-premises, or can they do it via Azure Active Directory, and that all those attributes and the additional users get written back to their on-premises AD? Did I get the question right? The answer is yes. So we've recently, but it's in preview, this feature. We've recently enabled capabilities of write back from Azure Active Directory. So now, passwords was the very first capability that our customers wanted, because they're being managed now in the cloud, and self-service password reset is a great capability in the cloud, but they want those passwords to be written back in their organization also. Users and groups have also been enabled, but that part is in public preview, soon going to be G8. So the answer is yes. Was a very Azure Active Directory specific question, not very Azure Access Management, but yeah. I'm going to move forward. What you saw was, in terms of role-based access control, the capabilities that we've delivered, 20 additional roles now that are available for you to manage access. The resource type specific roles are the ones which our customers are using to model their organization roles of different people doing different things right now in their organization. And custom roles is coming soon, like I was discussing. The finer grained capabilities come from, of course, now you can manage access not just at the subscription level, but also at a resource group level. I did not show managing access at a resource level, at an individual resource, but really that is possible too. I can take one VM, one website, one SQL database, and grant access to users on that specific entity also, even though we recommend managing access at a resource group level, because it just becomes easier you get the right access across the app, across the resource instances that actually make up an app, not a single one. Delegation of specific access management. This is a question that I get often. Hey, if I want to delegate access management, the only capability that's available is owners. Well, owners are the only one who can grant access to other people. Every other role, contributor has full access on all management plane of Azure. They can manage all resources, but they can't grant other people access to those resources. So how do I delegate just one specific aspect of access management that, hey, you are responsible for allowing other people to only create VMs? That's possible because now you can grant that access to a group and make this person an owner of that group so that they can manage the membership of that group and thus manage that specific access in Azure. So that's possible too. Access management model is super simplified. I'm going to show you some of the enhancements also that we're going to make here. People coming from other cloud providers having to write JSON all over the place and managing JSON. This is much simpler in terms of managing access, getting to know who all has access to what resources. I'm going to show you that too. Yeah, I described the coexistence with the current model of co-admins and service admins, the classic admin role. They have full access to both worlds, if you may, the existing portal, the existing service management APIs, as well as the new portal, the new service management APIs. Co-admin service admins manage everything. They are the owners of the subscription. However, the new users that are granted new roles, new RBAC roles, the groups that are granted new RBAC roles, they don't have any access to the previous portal. Previous portal does not understand RBAC at all. So if they go try to sign in to the previous portal, they'll get that familiar error message of, you don't have any subscriptions. Yeah? Only the new stack understands this, whether it's REST APIs, PowerShell, and the new portal. Everything understands role-based access control. All right, I have a question. Yeah.
And this is available now, or is it still preview?
Yeah, so it is preview, role-based access control, in the preview portal. However, there's this program that we've started over the past couple of months where we're providing support to all of the customers who are using this as it's in its preview state also. So when I talk to customers, I discuss this with them. Hey, can they use preview capabilities as a tool to manage resources which are actually production? And a lot of customers are like, yeah, that's just a management experience, and I'm okay having people go through this if you are ready to support me. And we do support, by the way. If you start using this for managing access to your production resources, we support you using the same support method that we have for our full portal right now. And soon, hopefully, we're going to be in GA, yeah, as soon as the new portal goes GA.
So as far as role-based access control and the various resources, not every resource can use RBAC, correct? And is that your team that's working on that, or is it each resource team?
Yeah, so the question was, not all resource providers of Azure are behind or are capable of role-based access control. You're right. For example, Service Bus is not yet capable of roles-based access control because it's not yet behind the Azure Resource Manager. Each individual team is responsible to move behind Azure Resource Manager. A big ask was cloud services wasn't behind Azure Resource Manager up until now, but it is now. And it is become in Azure, it's become the de facto platform now where new resource providers will be born behind Azure Resource Manager, and existing teams are also moving behind. It's not my team. My team is providing the access management capabilities centrally. Each individual team is coming in. But I don't have the roadmap. But if you have questions, you can send it to me. Don't shy away from that. I'll send it to the right people. Yeah? All right. I talked about access inheritance. Any access granted at a subscription level flows down, resource group flows down. We're also going to enable, by the way, access granting at a directory level. That's not been available today. But the similar hierarchy of every resource belongs to a single resource group, which belongs to a single subscription. Subscriptions also are associated with one and only one Active Directory. And we're going to enable granting of roles at an Active Directory level, which will grant access to all subscriptions associated with that Active Directory. We're going to begin with, for example, the directory admin right now, the Office 365 admins. The directory admins don't have visibility to Azure subscriptions. They're going to get read-only visibility and policy management capabilities on Azure subscription. And things like if an application, for example, folks who are enhancing our usage and billing APIs that we've recently released, they want access to all new subscriptions that get created in the organization because they're responsible, their app is responsible to monitor billing and usage for all subscriptions they're using. So they also want basically access to all subscriptions in the directory. That's something we'll enable. One thing which I don't know if you've experienced this with other cloud providers. Sometimes to grant access on a leaf node, let's say a resource, I have to also grant access to its parent, just so that the user can actually get to that leaf node. Otherwise, they'll not be able to get to that leaf node. What happens with that model, and that's a broken model, really, because that parent level access that you grant, you forget to revoke it when you actually revoke access at the real place where the user requires access to what they're managing. And that just gets stale if you have redundant access assigned multiple places. We did a lot of work in Azure to make sure that if you're granting access, let's say your organization has 100 subscriptions, and if you're granting access to a user on a VM in one subscription, you don't have to grant any access on the subscription or the resource group. When they sign into the portal, they will automatically see only that one subscription under which they have some kind of access, and only that VM will show up in the browse provider. So we've done a lot of work on the platform side to make it as simple as grant access. The user will get access, nothing else. You don't have to grant access artificially on multiple places. Yeah. All right, as soon as I talk about advanced capabilities of access management, hey, now you can do all of these great great granular access management. People say, hey, now can I track the changes which are happening? Earlier it was just co-admins. I had to go just one place to see who all has access to my resources and how to track changes. But now if role assignments are happening at multiple scopes on multiple, with users as groups, how can I analyze how access is changing? By the way, events is also a resource provider in Azure, App Insights it's called, and that also sits behind Azure Resource Manager. Policy management service, that's the actually service which provides access management capabilities. That also is a resource provider in Azure. So every access change is actually audited just the way all other changes in the system are audited. For example, if I delete a VM, restart a website, all of those changes which are going through Azure Resource Manager, getting audited in the events resource provider. All access changes are also audited in the same way. And you can get to those access events just by accessing basically Azure Resource Manager. We have a tool available. It's right now available, and I have customers who are using this tool right now. It's in my personal repo. I have a blog post on it. Soon it's going to be published as an MSDN sample for access management. Let me show you how it looks like. So Ellen, are you going to cooperate? You are. All right, so Ellen signs into this tool. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Number 5. If I forget, just please remind me, number 5. Can you see my screen? Yeah, so I did a connect ARM, that's the tool, and it popped up the familiar authentication dialog. And I'm signing in as Ellen. There should be a dot, not a comma. aaddemo.com. I'm sorry, yeah. All right, so you just saw me sign into a CLI tool, a command line interface tool, using my same Active Directory auth, just the way you're used to signing to the portal or the Azure PowerShell commandlets, because Azure AD Authentication Library is on every platform. We deliver the ADL SDK on all platforms, and ADAL can be used to authenticate the user interactively on any platform, really. And I've just signed in using ADAL to this tool, a PowerShell tool, and I can say get Azure ARM access change history. I can say days for the past 7 days. What it's going to do is go through all my subscriptions that I have some kind of access on, and it's going to query the events APIs for Microsoft.authorization namespace, which is the the policy administration service resource provider. And all of those are basically access change events. And it's going to translate the GUIDs that you see in events of users and the resources with their names from Active Directory and produce a report like this. So what it's showing is all of the changes that have happened to access in all my subscriptions over the past 7 days right now. We keep data for the past 90 days, I believe, in either 90 days or 180 days, I forget. in our events app insights, and you could query from long back also. So what it shows is at what date, what action was it? Revoked or granted access, right? In what directory was the access granted or revoked? In what subscription? What's the subscription ID? Who did this action? Ellen. Revoked access. On this role, what's the role? Storage account contributor. What was the subject? From a service principal, Azure key roller daemon. So she revoked access of a service principal from the subscription at this date. Similarly, I think in this case, Ellen is the only one managing access. And Ellen granted access of contributor to a service principal. Let's see if I have any newer events to users, contributor to a group, engineering operations department users on the resource group. So basically it produces a list of all of the changes that have happened to access across all scopes in all my subscriptions. You can use this report. It's reviewed better in an Excel sheet, and this is the kind of report it creates if you just output it in an Excel sheet. All of the things that we saw, what subscription, what user, granted what access. By the way, co-admin changes also get logged in the same way. So if you want to create a list of who was made the co-admin or who was revoked from the co-admin role, this works just the same way. That's one aspect, which is what are the changes that have happened. Get Azure, get ARM access assignments, basically gets all access assignments. That's the current state, not the history, the current state. Give me all access assignments across all my subscriptions, right? Dump it out in an Excel sheet. And that's just to look at who all has access to my data and just review it on an ongoing basis. And that's what these customers who are using the tools are doing. Like in a monthly audit process, are the right people having access to my Azure subscriptions? It even has a parameter, which is user, where it can get access policies for a specific user, considering even their group memberships. So the user, all of the groups that they're a member of transitively, what access do all of that have on all your subscriptions? That's useful if access revocation is required or a replacement needs to be found for that user for managing Azure. That's useful. So those are the tools that you can use today. This is the post that I was talking about. Keep a tab on access settings of your Azure subscription, and it describes how to basically get the scripts and run the scripts, generate the reports, so you can try it out if you wish. All right, number, what was it, 5? Thank you. All right, so since we released in September and people started using this a lot, and this data is from February, actually. Before we had released resource type specific roles also, VM contributor, VNet contributor, very popular roles, but we didn't have enough data then to actually make sense of it or to use for data science. But this is the pattern that we're seeing for owner contributor reader role assignments. It's almost a third are using reader role, a third are using owner, and a third are using the contributor role. That's the pie chart on the right. We are actually heartened to see that a lot of people are using groups for access assignments. It's interesting. I wonder what. Oh, okay. So 13% of users were using groups for access assignments. A lot of people, when they start out kicking the tires, they're using user-based assignments, but 13% group-based assignments was very good. And I believe those were the ones used for production systems. And finally, the role assignment scopes, the best practice that we've been telling them, hey, use resource group now as the security boundary. You don't have to use subscription as the security boundary, is in fact settling in, I guess, in some people's minds. And they are indeed using resource groups, 47% of them. A lot of access is being granted on resources, also individual resources. And it's like just one VM created, give it to a dev, they can manage that VM, go work on it. So what a lot of people now ask me, hey, we've worked with these enterprise customers. What are the best practices that are coming out for access management in Azure? The number one best practice, actually, I want to ask you guys, how many folks here are either managing access or their customers are managing access using Microsoft accounts to their production subscriptions. Microsoft accounts meaning live IDs. I expected more. Good. So for enterprises, we should stop that. We should have these customers use their work accounts. If they have Office 365, they already have an Azure Active Directory. They can just sign up with the work accounts for Azure and start to connect those work accounts, start to connect those subscriptions with their work accounts, manage access to all subscriptions using organization accounts instead of personal accounts. There is going to be, of course, use case for Microsoft accounts also. There's personal people, just a 1-2-man shop coming up and wanting to deploy Azure, so that's still going to make sense. But for enterprises, we want them to use organizational accounts. All the great features that we saw are being lit up for organizational accounts, really. Question?
Can we use this to look up Azure IDs?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So right now, it's not very easy to do that. Even to suggest that it's shameful, you have to be an admin of both the directories to be able to assign one or add one user from one directory to other. But right now, what we've also started is a B2B private preview. Azure Active Directory has started a B2B private preview. Have you folks ever used the SharePoint share document feature? So today, you can go to SharePoint and you can share a document with an external user from another organization or a Microsoft account. That user basically gets an invite, and when they redeem that invite, that's when they basically say, I want to redeem this invite using my personal account, Microsoft account, or I want to redeem this invite using an organization account. When they redeem that invite, that is when the stub or that user basically gets created in the directory to which the SharePoint subscription, SharePoint site collection is associated with, and they get the right access to the document or the SharePoint folder. Exactly the same way, we're going to enable granting access or inviting people from another organization and putting them in the Active Directory to which your subscriptions are associated, and then granting them access. Just the way you grant access using RBAC. Microsoft accounts does work already. Yeah. Resource group, not subscription. Now, a lot of folks created subscriptions, of course, because earlier, before September, the only way to grant access was to make the person a co-admin of the subscription, literally handing over the keys of the kingdom to them. What people ended up doing is every project is a different subscription. Every workload which requires access segregation is a different subscription. No, not required anymore. Resource groups is that boundary for a workload, for that application where you should manage access now. Yeah? Question?
What's the migration part of different subscriptions to migrating to resource groups?
Not very good, right? So the question is, what is the migration path of moving resources between subscriptions and basically creating them in the resource groups or moving them into resource groups into one? So it's not a good story right now. And we get asked a lot, but we're working on it.
Within the same subscription is not possible?
It's not possible right now to move resources between resource groups, but we're going to make that possible. That's a big ask, and it's not my team, it's the Azure Resource Manager team which is working on, but they know that, and other teams also, for moving resources between subscriptions or between resource groups. Yeah, that's coming soon too. We want you to manage access to Azure just the way you manage access to other applications, which is using security groups in AD, if that is, and managing membership of Active Directory groups on an ongoing basis, not have to basically go to individual places in Azure and grant the right access to users. Question in the back?
For the statement, this is my laundry list of things to do. I started out with migrating all the organizational accounts to Microsoft accounts. It took me a month and a half, then I had another person go through all the subscriptions, the 350 subscriptions, by the way.
Yes.
To clean it up. So I'm waiting for resource groups, and now that I have them, I have 15 internal accounts, but 60,000 external accounts that I need to sign resource groups. So that's what, $200,000, $400,000 cost for Azure AD. Is there a way I can do that internal without using Azure AD? Leverage resource groups?
I actually did not catch the entire thing. You know what? It looks, from just how it sounded, it looked like a more involved discussion. Can we have an offline conversation after? And I'd love to learn how you did the migration between Microsoft accounts to organization accounts. A lot of my customers are stuck there, and I'd love to learn from you and maybe make that a best practice, publish some guidance on how to do that. So could we just talk after the, get together after the talk and discuss further? Okay, cool, thank you. You saw in the pie chart that owner was granted as many times as contributor was, but we're pretty sure that all those people who were granted the owner role did not need access management rights. Just people must have seen, owner is there, they have full access, grant that. Make sure you're using the right role for the job. Contributor might work in most places where owner is and use the just least privilege in general and assign the right role. Keep a tab on changes, which is how is access history now changing in my organization, just on a regular basis, do that audit. Whether it's changed or who has any access to your subscriptions, just make sure that you have an eye on that also. Question, yeah?
Yeah, you said custom roles coming soon.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Like
Yes.
what that functionality will look like? For
Yes.
example, we have a big need to provide just the ability for us, I call them customers, but our end user, our business units, to be able to power off the allocated and start up machines.
Got it, yeah. So the question is, custom roles is coming. What is it going to look like? Can you show us? Yes, it's part of my presentation. I'm going to touch upon that also. I'm going to show you a sample implementation that a huge enterprise customer, a pharma customer, has done for role-based access control. What they have is sectors in their organization, and within sectors, they have different regions. Within regions, they have different divisions, and in each division, they have projects which are being run that need infrastructure in the cloud. They have roles in their organization, the IT director's office, the network admins, the infrastructure admins, they're also providing support, and their project team members who actually need access to the resources which are being created in each project. What they've done is they've connected, of course, this is good, they've connected their on-premises AD with Azure AD, and they have granted the right roles to these people on the right resource groups. What they do is they create a resource group for each project. They tag that resource group using the region, the division, the project name, and they have a subscription, Azure subscription for each sector, if you may. And then they're basically assigning owner of subscriptions as very select few people. Network admins are the ones which are managing the approved VNets in their infrastructure VNets, which are connected to their express routes. And then finally, people who can manage infrastructure are given the right roles on the resource groups. And individual project owners have whatever the appropriate role on the resource group which has been created for that project. So that's how this enterprise customer has done their access management design. Another customer which hasn't gone so big in so many subscriptions on all of their projects, it's a smaller team that they are doing. The update did not make it. All right. My bad. Let me tell you, it's a big property management customer, and what they're doing is they have just 5 subscriptions. One is a test subscription, a sandbox, and a dev subscription, 3, and they have 2 production subscriptions. And what they have on their on-premises side in terms of org roles are these app admins, app access admins, what they call, which have access to basically all the subscriptions. The dev teams only get access to the sandbox and the test subscription. Those are the 2 in which they basically, development and the sandbox subscription. The production and the test subscriptions are exclusively being managed by their network admins or their infrastructure admins, which are creating machines and managing machines there. Question? It was. Yeah, so the question was, will larger customers hit the limits on subscriptions? There are quotas on subscriptions on various different things. A lot of times, you just have to work with the team to up the quota. But for example, I believe there's a quota on how many VNets can be joined to an express route, right? So for that, you have to do the right VNet design, do the right subnet design for each project on that VNet, and just have to manage the number of in the quota. Or work with the team to up the quota, but there will be still some cap. Yeah.
We're in that process right now, trying to decide which route to go.
I see. All right, custom roles coming soon. You wanted to know what's coming. So we will allow our users to create new roles. It's going to be as simple as it's going to come with PowerShell management to begin with in terms of creation of custom roles. It's not going to be available in the UX to begin with. But new Azure role definition is going to be the commandlet. The input it takes is what's the custom role, what's the description, and these two are the main things: actions and assignable scopes. What are the actions that are allowed for this custom role? And what are the assignable scopes where the custom role can be assigned? We don't want people to create custom roles in one space which are just cluttering management for all subscriptions. Right? Microsoft has 147,000 subscriptions in Azure. We can't afford people creating custom roles which show up everywhere. So a custom role, when it gets created, you can control where that role shows up, in what subscriptions, in what resource groups even, for assignment. That is the thing you can control using assignable scopes. Actions will define basically what all permissions the custom role has, VM restart, etc. Actions is a concept in Azure Resource Manager. It looks like this: the namespace, Microsoft.classic network or Microsoft.authorization, what resource type, virtual networks, the action is on, and finally the action, which is join, restart, get, whatever it is. And every resource provider in Azure basically publishes a list of actions, securable actions that they support. We're going to have a commandlet to get all of the securable actions in Azure or for a specific resource provider, so that you can take that action, grant the custom role only the right actions that it needs to be granted, and create a custom role for yourself. The creation of custom role is going to be simple. Just basically collect all the actions, which is remove the actions from, you can take an existing role, modify that role, and create a custom role using that. We're going to enable that too. Or you can put it in a JSON file and push the JSON file up. Assignments of custom role is going to be as simple as assigning any other role. You could do that when you create that custom role. As soon as you're able to create custom roles, you would want to know what permissions that custom role has in a much better way, right? Today, when you have like owner, contributor, reader, and these resource type specific roles, it's very easy to understand. Okay, yeah, you can manage virtual machines, you can manage virtual networks. But when you're creating custom roles, we want to give you a much better experience to see what permission each role has. By the way, people coming from other cloud providers, when they see this, their mouth waters. This is the Azure resource type hierarchy, which has never been actually revealed to you up until now. All of the resource types of Azure and how they're related with each other is what you see on the left-hand side here. And each role is going to have what permissions on that resource type the role has in this view, whether they have create, read, update, delete. It's going to drill down on one specific row to give you custom actions also. So for example, this I've taken example of, I believe, a custom role, which has restart permissions on websites, etc. And when you drill down on a single virtual machine, it gives you all of the actions also, and whether the role has that action or not. So we're going to give this visibility into not just custom roles, inbuilt roles also, but for custom roles, it's going to be really useful for you to understand exactly what permissions these roles have. Conditional access. This is a great capability. For example, customers come to me and say, I want to block access from outside my network to Azure. In fact, I've enabled conditional access right now. Let me show you. Yeah, let me go back to this. And so if you go to Azure Active Directory and the application, you can go to the configure application. And for each application, you can enable conditional access policies. Whether it is for a specific group or not, you can exclude groups or you can include only a specific group and say what condition needs to be applied, required multi-factor auth when not at work, or completely block when not at work. And you can enable the access rule. I said this is coming soon because this in the UX is not available for portal. Right now, you can't enable this thing in the portal, but it's available in the platform. It's going to be available in the UX very soon. I've actually enabled it for this subscription that I was using, but when Ellen signed in, she didn't have to do multi-factor auth. The reason is, I'll show you. What you can configure is a work network. And what I've done is I've put my network right now I'm on as an exception to this. But when I change that, for example, let's say I change what the definition of my work network is. The next time Ellen tries to sign in, let's make sure it takes effect. New window. It's basically saying you need to do multi-factor auth because now suddenly she's outside network. It's like she's traveled to home and she's trying to access the same management portal. And now I have to do multi-factor auth to let her in. Let me just provide the key 663H21. Yep. All right, so she signs in. And this is effective not just at a portal level. Of course, the APIs are what are protected using it. So next time, even if she does like a custom tool to access, of course, this is available for Azure PowerShell. All our management capabilities are enhanced with conditional access. But even custom scripts using Active Directory authentication to go against Azure Resource Manager or Azure Service Management APIs are now enabled with conditional access. So the same command which I had done, the same tool that I had run before, when I try to run that, now it should basically prompt for multi-factor auth. Right? So multi-factor auth, when I enabled it with an exclusion of network, it got basically it had effect across all different clients that are managing access or managing Azure using Azure Resource Manager or even the previous service management APIs. Right? How do you define the network? I just so you could go here and you basically specify an IP range. I've specified this IP range. That's basically my known network. I can specify multiple IP ranges also. Right? That was basically conditional access. Let me go back to 5. Well, I had promised a lot of demos. This is indeed a lot of demos coming. When I discussed, when I implemented RBAC with our enterprise customers, many of them said, hey, good, RBAC is great. I'm managing all access to Azure now using RBAC, security groups, and such, but I still have to manage these storage account keys. And I'm worried that these storage account keys will someday land in an Excel sheet, and that Excel sheet will get leaked, or people who've had access to a storage account key leave my organization, and they still have access to the data in those storage accounts because the data plane of storage account is being managed by these keys, whereas everything else is being managed by the Azure AD user account. Well, there are a lot of resource providers in Azure which are using keys. And one solution that we've recently come up with, and one customer is actually using this, is using Key Vault. So Key Vault is a service that we've recently released where you can keep all your keys, passwords, and keys in the Key Vault. And you can manage access to the Key Vault using Azure Active Directory. So the setup is as simple as all of the storage account keys for your storage accounts reside in a Key Vault. Users and apps now don't ever have a storage account key in their web.config or in their connection strings. They always go to the Key Vault, get the key for the storage account, and access that storage account. Of course, that's meaningless if that storage account key stays the same. There is a scheduled job which is regenerating the storage account keys on a regular basis and just putting them in the Key Vault again and again. What this basically affects is that when I disable a user account, just what I do when a user leaves my organization in Active Directory, within a couple of hours, they lose access to storage accounts also. I don't have to go regenerate any keys, nothing. All of the keys are being regenerated, being rolled by the scheduled job. I've set it up, by the way, with a frequency of every hour. Let me switch and show you. And you can do this right now. You can just go back and configure this right now. What I've done is, let me go here. And it uses Azure Automation. Azure Automation is a really cool service. You can run scheduled jobs in Azure using Azure Automation. And this is basically, this scheduled job is living in Azure Automation. And every hour, it's resetting or regenerating all my keys. You'll see every hour, it's basically regenerating keys. If I go to the runbook that I've created for this and author, all basically it does is queries the storage accounts that you've provided and regenerates the keys. Gets storage accounts, regenerate keys, and put them in the key vault, write it to the key vault. You can do this right now. I've blogged about this in Say Goodbye to Keys Management, a very dramatic title. But this blog post basically goes into detail, gives you the runbook. You can install the runbook as an Azure Automation runbook and don't have to manage your storage account keys anymore. Yes, your applications which are using these storage accounts will have to change. Now, instead of keeping these keys in their web.config, which is also very unsafe, they'll basically query the keys from the key vault and then access the storage account. Every time they get a 403 forbidden, because the key will be regenerated in an hour, they'll go query the key again, cache it for an hour, use that. So that's basically the solution which we are recommending for even securing data plane level access using Azure AD and Key Vault. And finally, attribute-based access control. I'm just going to show you how I've configured this. It's a very simple configuration that I've done. You can configure groups in Azure Active Directory now, which are basically using our dynamic groups capability. So if I search Ellen, not users and groups, I will go to groups. Oh, I haven't done the right thing? Okay. Now? I'm sorry, I'm just in a mess in these. So remember, Ellen Adams' team was assigned access everywhere, and John had requested access to Ellen Adams' team, and then she approved access and joined that team. Really, Ellen Adams' team should be a dynamic group. Anybody reporting to Ellen should just automatically become a part of that team, and that's what I've configured here. This is Ellen Adams' team, actually, which I created 6 months back, and I still use that group for my demos. But now, a couple of months back, we've released this dynamic group feature where you can configure the criteria using which the group membership should be populated. And we have, in the language, you can specify that direct reports of this user, this is the object ID of Ellen Adams user, should automatically just join this group. So as soon as John started reporting to Ellen, he would have just become part of this group and would have gotten the right access dynamically. That's basically the power of attribute-based access control and using dynamic groups with Azure. So you could do that right now, use dynamic groups with Azure AD and do this. I'm right on time. It's 1 minute, 23 seconds remaining. All right. So that was a lot of demos, showed you a lot of stuff in terms of access management, the capabilities in Azure, the capabilities in Azure AD. It basically provides you state-of-the-art access management capabilities across your entire access management needs, really. Try it out, use it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to answer it, okay? Please scan this and send an evaluation right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts, yeah?